የሚቀጥለው ተናጋሪ ከማስተዋወቅ በፊት በጣም የተሰማኝን ደስታ ለመናገር እፈልጋለሁ። ትልቅ ስራ ነው የጀመራችሁት፣ ከፍተኛ ምስጋና ይገባችኋል። እንደገለጻችሁት ትልቅ ቮይድ ወይም ደግሞ ትልቅ ክፍተት ነበር የነበረው። ከአማራው ፐርስፔክቲቭ የሚቀርብ ነገር ሰብሰብ ያለ እንደዚህ በጥናት የተደገፈ ነገር ብዙም ነበረ ማለት አይቻልም፣ ግን አሁን በዚህ መልኩ መምጣቱ በጣም ደስ ይላል። Thank you very much for taking this very critical initiative. It will be very important to show void any public, as you said, it will be filling the gap in publishing content about the Horn of Africa with Amhara perspective. So it will be very important to show about the Horn from the Amhara perspectives. So having said that, I want to introduce the next presenter or the next speaker. The next speaker will be Mr. Desalegn Birara. He's going to present on historical precedents to the current Amhara situation and potential remedies. በአማርኛ ሲመለስ አሁን እየተከሰቱ ላሉ የአማራ ፈተናዎች መሰረት የሆኑ ታሪካዊ ክስተቶችና የመፍትሄ አቅጣጫ ጥቆማዎች በሚል ርዕስ አቶ ደሳለኝ ቢራራ ያቀርቡልናል።
እሺ፣ አመሰግናለሁ። ደሳለኝ ቢራራ እባላለሁ። በትምህርት ሶሲዮሎጂ ከአዲስ አበባ ዩኒቨርሲቲ የመጀመሪያዬንም የሁለተኛ ዲግሪዬንም የተማርኩ አሁን ደግሞ በቤልጅየም ለሶስተኛ ዲግሪ ትምህርት መጥቼ እዚሁ የምኖር ነኝ። በስራ ልምድ ደግሞ በባህል ቅርስ ኪዩሬተርነት በቅርስ ጥናትና ጥበቃ ባለስልጣን ላለፉት 10 ወይም 9 ዓመታት ስሰራ ነበር። ዛሬ የማቀርበው አሁን ላለው የአማራ የህልውና ችግር የዳረጉ ሁኔታዎች ምንድን ነበሩ፣ አሁንስ ያለው ችግር እንዴት ነው የሚታየው እና የመፍትሄ መንገዶችስ ምን ሊሆኑ ይችላሉ በሚል ርዕስ ነው። አጠር ተደርጎ የተሰራ ነው እንትኑ ምናልባት ሙሉ ሀሳብ ላይይዝ ይችላል ስላይዱ፣ ግን ሸር ማድረግበት ሚንስ ካገኘሁኝ ለሚያዳምጡ ለሚያዩን ሰዎች የተሻለ ይዘቱን ሙሉ በሚያደርግ መልኩ የተዘጋጀ ሰነድ አለ የማካፍል ይሆናል። በእንግሊዝኛ ስለተዘጋጀ I think it would be better if I continue in English. The precedents to the ongoing Amhara genocide and its prospects, it dates back to as Andualam previously mentioned it, in the Ethio-Italian War, especially in their second round aggression in the 1930s. And following their crushing defeat, they came up with long-standing strategies of dividing the native people of Ethiopia and antagonizing them so that the strengths of the Abyssinian Empire could be dwindled and then they could succeed in maybe a third time invasion. Amongst the highly renowned proponents of making the historical narratives of the time to weaken Ethiopia from within is Prochaska. He wrote, normally he was a spy working as a waiter in different settings in the country, especially in Addis, and he was serving diplomats and officials of the empire. No one knew that he was so, and he had been writing and making reports to the European powers, and he produced the very famous the Power Barrel Abyssinia book. It's a collection of chronicles of the time, and he puts it to the Europeans in a very crystal clear way how, unless they come together against Ethiopia, would not succeed in colonizing that nation, that proud nation. He says, in this struggle, the attacked are all the colonial powers in Africa without exception. What we are witnessing is by no means a local frontier between Abyssinia and Italy. Thus, identify የተደረጉት አካላት የነበረው በወቅቱ sometimes to switch it back to Amharic የኦርቶዶክስ ቤተክርስቲያን የአማራ ህዝቦች እና ሴቶቻቸው ቋንቋቸውን ጨምሮ ባንዲራው እና የሀገር ፍቅር ስሜታቸው እንደነበረ ሪፖርት ተደርጓል ሰፐሬትሊ። Therefore, the historical narratives that focus attacking the strength sides of the Abyssinian Empire were identified, and there was, as early as the 1930s and 40s, an orchestrated attack on these strong sides of the empire. The other historical precedent to the current genocide against Amhara is the ethnic politics, which was talked in the 1960s, especially after the students' movement, when the other ethnicized groups like the Macha group of the Western Galla Confederation went through developing their own purpose, mission, and articulated projects to liberate or seek liberation against the Ethiopian Empire and have a collective action against Amharas to cleanse Amharas from the claimed Oromo land. The Ethiopianist and mainly the Amhara elite had been in a big oblivion or generally under a state of myopia. The Amhara elite didn't have any action or idea unless it was to attack itself, like the actions or the undergoings by the student movement itself. It was against the monarchy, it was against the Amhara people, it was against the sentiment of being Ethiopian or Ethiopian pride, and they contributed to demolish all that positive aspects of the country. And the other side, the ethno-nationalistic groups, used it as a leverage to become who they are today. And there was a political miscalculation amongst Amharas. No one believed that a genocide against Amhara would happen when they were amongst the proponents of Marxism or the questions of nationalities, like what Walaling said in those days. And this contributed anyway, by and large, to the current Amhara condition. They didn't have control over the narratives, nor they had any attempt of forming a separate or independent entity of Amhara politics in those days, but they remained confused or neutralized, and that contributed to affirm what they did was right and what they didn't was also right. In the meantime, Amhara was left defenseless. And the Wala-Lynch's paradox is amongst the best examples that we can mention from those days. Then this bore Oromoma as an ideology of genocide. It has been clearly stated by Oromo scholars, particularly Asafai Jalata, how Oromoma could succeed in Ethiopia, especially assimilating other ethnic groups, which means making them Oromo as their experience can witness, and make an Oromo government or hegemony in the aftermath of eliminating Amharas. It literally waged a genocide, mentioning that Oromoma should eliminate all differences irrespective of religion, language, ethnicity, or any other affiliations, which means there will be a monolithic socio-political organization of the people in the country, and a government goes in so way. And on the other hand, those who view this kind of argument or ideological approach have been so simplistic, even at a counter-argument level. It didn't have much to bring to effect. For example, amongst the current good writers and teachers of political science is Yusuf Samir, who said the current regime or the current Oromoma government had the intention to correct historical mistakes that he thought or presented the previous regimes and government side Amhara domination, and the present is also accused of being dominating over Amhara or the others, which is somehow avenging historical grievances. But it's much more than that. It's heavier than that. It's genocidal. This is how, to their level of highest aggression, can the present scholars respond for an ideology that wages crystal clear genocide on people. On the other hand, Jalata's inter-ethnic dictatorship and intra-ethnic democracy has been applied correctly according to the premises that the ideology has mentioned. Inter-ethnic dictatorship is the way they interact with non-Oromo groups in the country, which they waged war against sometimes, like the present day in Amhara region under the state of emergency. And there is the intra-ethnic democracy, which means between Oromo, any faction inside Oromo has to have a democratic approach of dealing things. Even though there may be differences, they have to be resolved with the majority rule and minority rights principles. And it is remarkably observed in the past 6 years that this ideology has been working. And the other important historical incident that we can mention as a precedent to the Amhara genocide is Amhara nationalism. Amhara nationalism, as I in the students' movement time mentioned, there was no active Amhara that can mobilize Amhara people to come up with Amhara-based political organization. They were oblivion or simply Ethiopianist and naive, while the others, like TPLF or Oromo-based political organizations, were fermenting with the hate against Amhara. So the last one, or maybe the first establishment on the basis of Amhara social base as a political organization was organized by Professor Asrat Waldayes, even though that one itself was down the line not Amhara politically speaking. I mean, it wasn't Amhara nationalist, but it used to have Amhara mobilization, who were victim people of the time, and impact the ethnic federalism that ruled the country since then, which means by design, the All Amhara People's Organization was also not ethnically Amhara strategic political organization. It only rose up to confront the ethnic federalism that Professor Asrat believed made the Amhara people vulnerable for ethnic cleansing and genocide. But strategically, it wasn't an ethnic-based politics organization. So it didn't last very long. It just was vulnerable even for more factions within. And then with assassination, I call it assassination for Professor Asrat, in the aftermath of his passing away, it ceased to exist. So there was no clear vision and strategic guideline in the Amhara nationalism generally. There is no accountable contribution of the All Amhara organization for Amhara nationalism as we can imagine in our present day perspectives. The second attempt was the National Movement of Amhara. It was established in 2018. It had a very good impact in mobilizing the grassroots level communities and people, but it was not free from infiltration and disenfranchisement by dictatorial officials. And then its leaders were also imprisoned, neutralized, and finally deemed to have a minimum effect in protecting the Amhara people. So we can say generally it was shortly castrated, and the assassination of Amhara officials continued then. This is generally the precedent to the ongoing genocide. And the immediate markings, the immediate activities that lead to the all-out war in Amhara were begun with the assassination of Amhara officials and disbanding the Amhara Special Force, and a summary of the genocide generally began with the state of emergency that has been still in effect. Amhara genocide covertly began with the legal framework of the when it was constitutionalized in 1991, because it targeted Amharas as historically oppressors of other ethnic groups, and this was legalized. So it designed a revenge, strategic revenge to the Amhara people. And wherever Amharas live, they were treated as historical enemies of the neighborhoods wherever they live. And then that marked the start of the genocide. The orchestrated genocide was from there on. The federal government's war in Tigray also has revealed that even though the two parties, the federal government and the Tigray People Liberation Front, TPLF, were in the direct war, both were intended to attack Amhara as a common enemy. Even when the TPLF attacked the Northern Command on November 4, 2020, selectively Amhara soldiers were killed, while others were taken as trophy in different localities. Later, we came to know that none of Amharas survived. They were selectively killed. And then the war was pushed towards the Amhara region so that Amhara will be devastated economically, socially, and politically, and that has been still going on. Even after they agreed a cessation of hostilities, as they repeatedly call it the Pretoria Agreement, it didn't stop for Amharas, but devastated. It escalated to a full-scale war by the current regime, and especially the Maikadra attack by the Samri group that TPLF organized was a testament of the historical hate of the Tigrayan ultra-ethnocentric sentiment and parties against the Amhara. So it has been still going. The place they claim, Western Tigray, which never existed before 1991, is still vulnerable for mass human rights abuses, because they still are trying to occupy more lands against the temporary ruling administration by Walqait Tagade Satit Humara zone in Amhara region. And Raya is also experiencing the same. Since the last 3 months, TPLF invaded 2-3 times Alamata and Wafla Waradas, where they slaughtered civilians in the streets to show and frustrate residents so that they can be voluntarily abandoned, and it's still going. That is on the other page against that Oromuma. Oromuma does its job in Oromia, Oromo land, Oromia region, Addis Ababa and surrounding towns, and a full-scale war in the Amhara land. So Amhara has been surrounded with all of these actors. It never had any support from an international agent or country, and its international collaboration or effort by its elite has been minimum. In the Amhara land, destruction of infrastructure is claimed, even reported by the very regime that destroyed it. It took or undo the Amhara region 30 years. And they estimated it was nearly $1 trillion birr. It's an economic genocide. And the Amhara people had no more facilities for health, education, water, electricity. It was all blackouts in the 2 years' time. And only in the past 2 weeks, internet has been released, but still that's with the intention to figure out where the resurging Fano of fighters and their leaders can be located. It's not for the good of the people. So it has been a complete economic genocide on Amhara. It has been a clear genocide, even Holocaust. Muluk Antasfau has a very well articulated article on the topic. He argues it's a Holocaust, so that's still going on. And they organized an allied army of the Federal Police Commando, the Oromia Region Special Force, the Amhara militia, and the UNDF of the Ethiopian National Defense Force have been killing people indiscriminately in the region. It has been observed in religious centers like the Debre Elias Monastery, in the in Marawi town residents, in public transportation, in the health facilities, in the schools across the region. It is an indiscriminate killing by the drones and by the artillery and by armed men or the soldiers that has been fighting against Fano. To withstand this existential threat, the Amhara people had to organize themselves, and they had the heritage, a collective organization, called Fano. Fano maybe will be later discussed by Professor Girma in detail. It came into effect with the call of the federal government when it was fighting against TPLF, because it was true and genuine cause that Amhara has an existential threat, and unless Amhara is organized from the grassroots level to the top management, it will be difficult to withstand this threat. And especially the social movements since the 2016 that took down TPLF have contributed to the rise of Fano. Thus, participation in the war against TPLF since 2020 helped Fano to organize itself, make good training and mobilization from the grassroots level, and it made its crystal clear agenda to the public, and the public accepted that there is a common threat to all Amhara people. So now we see the mobilization of every able individual in Amhara region, and they are on the fight for existence. So building camps, recruitment of youth, and confiscation of arms from the federal governments or the regime's forces has contributed to strengthen Fano in multiple ways. Yet it has prominent features, especially in its organization. There is no clear distinction between the military structure and the politics wing. So this fusion made a problem on electing leaders. No matter who will be elected leader, there still is a problem because the political wing had to work in an independent council or whatever sort of structure and organization. But the military wing has been working as the same part of the political wing. So there is a tendency of making Fano some wings possession or property, and that's against the historical genesis and value of Fano in the Amhara people. Fano is free of political orientation or party or organization, but it only contributes to the existential struggle as a party of survival, or as an association and organization for survival. Thus, all those parties involved in this existential struggle are recommended to refrain from claiming Fano as their supporter or base, as long as Fano serves as base for all Amhara centered or all those actors involved in the existential struggle. This is one structural feature observed in the 5 years fight. So the other challenge for the current existential struggle of Fano is strategic decision on Amhara nationalism. There are two wings now debating on how to use the Amhara nationalism. One claims it should be a means to an end. That is the paradigm or the perspective that seeks Ethiopianism ultimately. And the other is our beginning is Amhara, or end is Amhara, is somehow a different kind of sect from the first one. And this has to be well discussed and decided on how the Amhara nationalism should be instrumental in the existential struggle. After all, both parties have goodwill to the survival struggle and for Amhara to survive in general, but on how they apply the nationalism should be after discussion. Yet the discussion has to be conducted, and I don't see enough platforms and enough sessions to do that. So this is a gap observed in the struggle. So preventing authoritarianism or dictatorship has to be thought of as the present structures allow it naturally, because if any one of them from these two wings can be elected and own Fano generally, then they will have a power to control both the politics and the military, which by default makes them dictators. And the Amhara people are not fighting and sacrificing their lives to make a dictator or an authoritarianism. It's for survival, at the same time for liberation. And it has to be democratic, free, and responsible. So people has to consider this whenever they go and sit for discussion, as well as appear for vote to be a leader of this existential struggle. And these are the prospects that anyone who is concerned or believed to contribute anything in the struggle should focus. Thank you very much. If there is any questions, I can come back and clarify points further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Desalegn, for your wonderful presentation. You covered a lot of, many subtopics from starting from historical perspectives and to the current situation, Amhara genocide. So you showed us the root cause of the current ongoing Amhara genocide has colonial roots, and they used false narratives against the Amhara people, Orthodox Church, Amharic language, and the Ethiopian flag. And in my opinion, it's not coincidental right now. At the moment, all these are attacked, all these four attack against the Amhara people, Orthodox Church, Amharic language, and the Ethiopian flag is ongoing right now. So no coincidence here. It has historical roots. And they used, you mentioned, they use this three discourses, false discourses: Amhara domination, Amhara settlers and Amhara expansion. So they use this in Amharic ገዢ መጤ ተስፋፊ እያሉ የሚጠቀሙበትን የአማራ ጠላቱ በደንብ አድርገው ታይቷል። And he showed to falsify this historical perspective. He showed the Amhara's historical presence in Ethiopia highlands for 70,000 years. So he showed the studies that give evidence can be used as evidence. He also showed ethnic identity politics, the background 1960 student movement, and other, fragment Ethiopian elites contributed to that. It all continued to the current situation, Amhara genocide situation, and he also showed Oromo ideology. So as it has a genocidal design, and by Asaf Jalata, it was interethnic dictatorship. He showed all that. And then he mentioned also about Amhara nationalism, mentioned Professor Asrad's party attempt, and the national movement Amhara, Aben, and all those attempts. And also he showed us the resurgence of Fano to defend existential threat of the Amhara people. So it's very important. At the end, he showed us the Amhara people as a people, not only Fanos, should decide on the strategic decision of Amhara nationalism, which way to go. So it's very important in my opinion. We have to find solutions together. So thank you for your wonderful presentation. And I hope people will ask at the end. So after this, we have 10 minutes, or Dr. Gashaw, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes, 10 minutes tea break, and we'll come back after 10 minutes. Thank you.